and many speakers who have come before us in thanking His Excellency the President of the Republic of Egypt, Mr. Sisi, and his entire government, and not forgetting the people of Egypt for their hospitality extended to all of us, and indeed for hosting this very important forum. Yesterday and today, I think we have heard the negative effects of corruption. And I want to premise my discourse on the submission which was made yesterday by the Auditor General from Ghana, who likened corruption to cancer. We know that prevention for cancer has always been the way, because when cancer spreads to the entire body, even the experts find it a challenge to deal with it. The difficult decisions that are made when cancer has taken root in the body, which has weak immune system, includes in some cases amputation of certain parts of the body, which leaves permanent impairment of the body. Now, in the similar context, if corruption takes root in institutions, in government, it becomes very difficult to uproot it. And so, how do we maximize the utilization of technology to deal with the environment which permits corruption? Like I said, cancer thrives where the immune system is weak. And similarly, corruption in governments and institutions where there are no systems can easily take root and becomes a challenge to uproot. So what the government of Zambia and under the directives of His Excellency the President did was to establish the e-governance system, which then was to deal with the issues of bureaucracy. Because where there is bureaucracy, you create the environment where, if, for example, people want to access government services, will be made to panic. And in the panic, they will be prompted to start offering bribes for services that would ordinarily be given to them without paying any extra fee. And for the ones that receive bribes, it becomes a normal way of doing business. So I will tackle the aspect of revenue correction because every nation can only develop when they are able to mobilize resources internally for its development and indeed offer of services to its people. The institutions that are charged with the responsibility of mobilizing resources, if they've got no systems to ensure that those investors who are exploiting the natural resources deposited in the particular country, and for example Zambia, are not able to declare the required taxes, they're able to cheat in terms of how much they have to pay in terms of revenue. So all these are matters that we feel and we felt could be addressed by establishing systems of ICT. Those that import goods and services into the nation always want to maximize on profit and want to consider tax duty to be part of their profits. So how do you make sure that when someone imports a vehicle from a country of origin, they don't come and change the value so that they pay lesser duty? You should have these systems that are able to track down the source of these goods in terms of value so that people are meant to pay the appropriate duties, which should then go to the revenue basket of the nation for the government to save its people. And we also identified breeding areas, procurement of services, contracts in terms of infrastructure development. How do we create systems which could enhance transparency in ensuring that there is always value for money? Yes, we want infrastructure development, but if we don't create an environment where those that design our infrastructures do not collude with those that are supposed to put up this infrastructure, and create standards which can be held, used to make those that we contract to do these massive works accountable. So we are investing more into ICT platforms in order to ensure that we seal the breeding grounds and the leakages. So procurement sector has gone on e-government platforms so that competition amongst those in the private sector can be enhanced and transparent too. The law enforcement agencies who have been given the responsibility to ensure that where there are some slippages, culprits are held accountable, can only be effective, and like I said, prevention better, can only be effective when there are systems that they are able to monitor equally with equal capacity, and also with the same e-governance platforms that will be able to assist them in tracking down the aspects of corruption. The issue of intelligence information gathered, we have established what we call financial intelligence unit, for example, which then gathers information, monitors the movement of funds, of investors, and to make sure that those that are in government institutions are also kept in check in terms of what they do. But this can only be effective in a complementary way by making sure that the intelligence information is like a grab and a punch for the law enforcement agencies. Because if that intelligence information cannot be utilized for investigation purposes, which investigations then culminate into prosecutions of culprits, it can only remain speculative in nature. And so this is the area we are trying to see how we can enhance the coordination between the law enforcement, the Anti-Corruption Commission, which is an institution that is mandated to deal with corrupt activities and ensure that culprits are prosecuted. There is also Drug Enforcement Commission, which is also dealing with money laundering issues. So this is the cohesion that we want to see in terms of the fight against corruption. But prevention will only be helpful if the focus is in ensuring that those that offer government public services are transparent. For example, I will talk about the immigration system of our country. We want to make it easier for those that want to come and invest in Zambia by being able to access the information they need. How should one get an investor's permit? They don't need to go to know someone with influence to manipulate the system in order for them to access the necessary documentation for them to come and do investment. They should be from the city of Cairo, be able to apply for the permit, have it processed and pay for it, so that when they come, they don't have to meet anyone and who makes it difficult for them to access these services and ask for extra kickbacks in order for these services to be given to them. And so the systems we have put in place have not only lessened the aspect of corruption, but also have doubled the figures that we collect in terms of non-tax revenue. The services of civil registration, why should it be difficult for citizens to be registered and get their identity cards, passports? But if you leave them to use the bureaucratic and historical systems which are manually based, you are creating a breeding ground for corruption. So where you have foolproof e-government systems which lessen the contact between citizens and the institutions that give them these services, you can only then have this environment where citizens are given value for money. So in having this forum, we know that we are saying let's have the trade barriers broken down among the AU member states. So if countries put systems that will be able to allow trade to flourish, with all the institutions being accountable, it will then be easier to have the African continent trading, having their member states trading without these corrupt practices between the private sector and indeed the public sector, which is governments. So there is need for this fora to come up with resolutions that will ensure that member states embrace e-government platforms, which should be able to be compatible among the member states, both in terms of documentation and both in terms of interface between systems. Information sharing between those that are back home in our country, Zambia, is a scenario where the president has made it clear to all of us serving under him that if you're found wanting, we won't wait until you leave office. We should make sure you account, whilst you still have the authority which could have abused to engage in corrupt practices. And this makes it easier for our law enforcement agencies to move without applying the law segregatively. everybody must be made to account regardless of the status. And this should be the spirit of all serving government. Because the moment you start segregating on who should account for corrupt activities, money laundering, then you already lose the fight. And our institutions cannot do as much. For those in the auditing practice, you always deal with issues, misappropriation of funds, misapplication of funds in your reports. Even where you have got these internal checks of internal audit, pre-auditing of transactions before they are done, but they still find these challenges appearing in your report. How do we deal with such kind of expenditure use? In our case, we have come up with what we are saying an integrated financial management information system, where revenues for the state are controlled centrally, and any transaction which is not budgeted for cannot be automatically be allowed to be effected. So that way, it makes it easier for those that have got the responsibility to appropriate government resources to ensure that they only apply the funds for purposes that are budgeted for. In the event that they want to change, like those that are in the law enforcement, certain eventualities that crop up, not budgeted for, you must make sure that authority is given before you can get to spend. So, Madam Moderator, thank you so very much, and we are grateful for this forum, and we expect that as we go back home, we can then start implementing some of the things that we have learned from those that are doing better. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre. Merci d'avoir proposé des remèdes contre ce que vous appelez cancer, qui en est une. Et merci surtout de nous avoir parlé du e-government, comme vous l'appelez.